we have one of our most intriguing cases in our hands. A crown jewel has been pilfered by none other than an English professor, no less.
A professor, you say? How do we track down such a clever criminal?
Take a look at this one. This time, our adversary has left behind a very cryptic puzzle that speaks to the very essence of our mind.
Good heavens! What kind of cryptic puzzle is this?
Patience, Watson, patience. Let us dissect these lyrics one by one. I am a structure of the mind, shaping thoughts of every kind. Through me, the world finds its frame, organizing concepts not the same. What am I?
But what does this riddle mean, Sherlock?
Yes, my dear Watson, is frame semantics.
Frame semantics. This theory was proposed by Charles Fillmore back in the 1980s. To understand this theory, let's think about how we explain things and the meaning of words. For example, what is a buyer? If we had to explain the word, we would probably say something like a buyer is a person who wants a certain product and has the money to buy that product and go shopping for that product. So, in order to explain the meaning of the word buyer, we need to evoke a whole scenario, and that scenario is a frame, and the meanings of the word that belong to a frame are all interconnected. And if we use one of those words, we immediately evoke the others. So essentially, frames serve as a structural framework for organizing our understanding of the world. They allow us to categorize and store information about various concepts and categories, providing a mental structure that facilitates efficient retrieval and processing of knowledge. Unlike simple list of features, frames capture the intricate web of relationship between different components of a concept. For example, when we think of a car, we don't just list its parts, we understand how these parts interact and function together, such as the relationship between the engine and the wheels in propelling the vehicle forward. There are two components of a frame, the attributes and value, and the structural invariants. The attributes describe aspects of category members, while values represent subtype of attributes. The structural invariants capture the relationship between the attributes. Say, for example, the relationship between the driver and an engine in a car frame to ensure coherence and consistency. In this partial frame of a car, we see various attributes like engine, driver, and fuel, each representing different factors of a concept. Under fuel, for instance, petrol and diesel serve as the specific instance or values. Furthermore, structural invariants highlight consistent relationships such as the driver's control over the engine speed, irrespective of the type of fuel, illustrating the interconnection of attributes within the frame. The commercial event frame is crucial for understanding words like buy, sell, pay, and others, providing the background and motivation for these concepts. So, this frame includes participants' roles such as buyer, seller, goods, and money, and also valence, which refers to how verbs combine with other words in sentence, is a consequence of this frame. For example, the buy typically involves two participants, buyer and good, while pay involves three, buyer, seller, and goods. This prototypic commercial event is going to involve those four elements, but depending upon the words that we use, we are going to construe the meaning differently. So, this is because our cognitive ability of construction, that is, our ability to see and understand things from different perspectives.
Yeah, that makes sense, Sherlock. Now, what's the second riddle?
I am vast yet intangible, a playground for thoughts untangled. Dreams, memories, ideas unite. In me, imagination takes flight. What am I? Do you want to try the second one, Watson?
Could it be mental space?
Yep, my dear Watson.
Mental spaces. So, what are mental spaces? So, we are able to talk about things that are not happening at the moment, things that are not real, things that are not objective, and we also can invent stories and come up with innovative imagination and ideas. So, how do we do that? The idea in cognitive linguistics is that we create mental spaces as we speak, and these mental spaces are structured by frames and other cognitive elements. Also, different mental spaces can connect to each other. So, let's take an example. Suppose, imagine that you have traveled to Paris in 2015. The moment we do so, we imagine a mental space that contains us, Paris, the year 2015, and the act of us traveling there. The sentence for this would be like, Um, Imagine you travel to Paris in the year 2015. So that's what led to the creation of this mental space. Now consider this scenario where there is a slight modification in the sentence. So let's take the sentence, if you had been with me in Paris in 2015. So here we set up the same mental space, but it talks about how things could have been different. So it has been hypothesized that at the neural level, mental spaces are sets of activated neuronal assemblies. In this view, mental space operate in working memory. That's why they are short-term constructs. As mentioned earlier, we tend to create mental space as speech unfolds. But these spaces are built up partly by activating structures that are already available from our long-term memory, like how our frames uh, prototype or encyclopedic knowledge. So that's how these mental spaces come into existence, or that's how, or at least that's what's believed in cognitive uh, semantics. So let's see about what are the components that make up mental spaces. Space builders. So space builders are linguistic units that either prompt for the construction of a new mental space or shift attention back and forth between previously constructed mental spaces. Mental spaces, if you consider this example, like he sleeps at the shop. So here the word at the shop tends or promotes the creation of the mental space of a mental space comprising of a shop, a person, and the act of sleeping. Similarly, the example where we use from his perspective in his time. So all these spaces tend to the creation of mental spaces. Next component that make up mental space is elements. Elements are entities constructed online or pre-existing entities in the conceptual system. For example, the queen, the teacher. The sentence which contains these noun phrases usually indicate that these nouns or elements are active participants that make up the mental space. For example, the queen gave the order to kill the knight. So here the queen and the knight are both elements of the mental space. The third important part of the architecture of mental space is the properties and relation elements have with each other and with respect to the mental space. So let's take the example of sentence. In that play, Othello is jealous. In that play is the space builder here, which tends to the creation of the mental space. Othello is the element active in this. The word jealous here defines the property or the attribute possessed by the element, that is Othello. So when multiple mental spaces interact with each other, it forms something called mental space lattice. It can be conceptualized as a network where individual mental spaces are the nodes and the relations between them form the connection or edges. These connections represent logical or associative links that are established based on the context, linguistic cues, shared knowledge, and the inferential need of the discourse or thought process. Let's take the example. James Bond is a top British spy. In the war, he was an officer in the Royal Navy. Here, the first sentence, James Bond is a top British spy, creates a mental space which gives the information about the element, which is James Bond here. And the top British spy is acts as a space builder in this sentence. In the next sentence, in the war, he was an officer in the Royal Navy. We can clearly see that there are two elements, two phrases that leads to a creation of two separate mental spaces. In the war creates the mental space of a war, which leads to fighting and conflict, and the words in the Royal Navy leads to the creation of another separate mental space. So we can see how three different mental spaces are created here and how they interact with each other. So the combined interaction will help in the total understanding of the sentence.
Good job, Watson. Now let's move on to the
I
third
am the
level.
bridge between two worlds where ideas dance and truth unfurls. From disparate realms, I create anew, blending concepts to reveal what's true. What am I?
Go. I know this one. Conceptual blending.
Conceptual blending. In conceptual blending, two mental spaces are brought together and form a new blended space which uses elements from both the space. For example, what happens when we say the sentence, if I were you, I wouldn't do that? In our minds, we construct a hypothetical person that is a blend of you and me. A blend of me, that is, a person with my personality in your situation, would not do something like that. Conceptual blending theory arises from the fusion of conceptual metaphor theory and mental space theory. It accounts for phenomena that these theories alone cannot explain, offering a sophisticated model of meaning construction. Blending theory emphasizes dynamic aspects of meaning creation and the integration of structure to generate emergent meanings. The blending theory proposes that meaning construction involves the integration of inputs to create a blend. The integration network consists of inputs mapping a generic space and a blended space, generating emergent structures. Emergent meanings are more than the sum of their parts, providing novel insights into language and cognition. For example, let's consider the metaphor that the surgeon is a butcher. In conceptual metaphor theory, the metaphor that surgeon is a butcher is typically analyzed as a mapping from the source domain of butchery to the target domain of surgery. While this theory suggests a stable and systematic relationship between the two domains, it fails to explain the underlying implication of incompetence associated with the metaphor. Unlike butchers, surgeons are highly skilled professionals. However, the idea of incompetence arises because the goals and means of the two domains, surgery and butchery, do not align. So the butchers perform their works on dead animals through dismembering, while surgeons aim to save lives through repair and reconstruction. This mismatch in goals and means generates a contrast, leading to the emergence of the idea of incompetence. Conceptual blending theory provides a more comprehensive analysis by incorporating the notion of emergent structure, where elements from the inputs combine and interact in a blend space. The conceptual blending theory suggests that the emergent structure in the blend space includes elements copied from the input space, along with additional structure that arises from the interaction between these elements. In the case of a surgeon as a butcher metaphor, the blend combines the skills of surgery with the context of butchery, resulting in an individual who attempts to perform surgery using butchery skills, hence appearing incompetent. This emergent meaning of incompetence is unique to the blend and does not exist in either of the input spaces alone. Therefore, by accounting for the dynamic interaction between different conceptual domains and the emergence of novel meaning, conceptual blending theory offers a more nuanced understanding of metaphorical expressions and their implications.